You're about to listen to Shed, conversations about race on Martha's Vineyard, with your host, Eric Adams, a presentation of MVY Radio.
Shawn returns to the podcast and reminds us the kind of creativity and brilliance that exists behind the bars of America's prisons and delivers some hard truths about mass incarceration from a man who experienced it firsthand. But more importantly, Shawn tells us about how he is using his experience to serve marginalized community and shows us what it means to be resilient. Hello again, and welcome to Shed. So, we did an episode a couple of years ago that I hope you had a chance to listen to with folks from the Barred Prison Initiative. And we are fortunate today to have one of those members, Shawn Young, join us again. Shawn, welcome back to the program.
Oh man, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. We've got to spend a little time the last couple of days, which has been really nice.
Yeah, it has been nice. I missed the island. I'm happy to be back, and I'm certainly happy to have this conversation with you.
Great. And my first question actually is about the island. You told me yesterday that this is your fourth time being on Martha's Vineyard. And so I was curious as to what your initial impressions were of the island before you came, what they are now, and if anything has changed since your first visit.
That's a very good question. I feel like, my initial thoughts about the island, I got from books. And I just thought it was a lot of wealthy people living here.
There's a few.
Yeah, there is a few. There's a few. I thought it was going to be very homogenous. Mm-hmm. I didn't think about the native peoples that are here. And I certainly didn't think about places like Oak Bluffs where people of color live. So I was pleasantly surprised when I got here. Now, interestingly enough, I caught the wrong ferry coming in when I first came here, right? I was supposed to go to Vineyard Haven, ended up in, going to Oak Bluffs, and I had no idea what Oak Bluffs was, right? So I'm just, I pull up, and then I got to take a cab or Uber or whatever to where I'm going, and as I'm going through the town, I'm like, black people, like just black people. I'm like, wait a minute, so it was a striking difference to me. It's like, it was almost immediate that I saw the difference from what I thought about the place to what it actually was.
Have you since learned about any of the history of African Americans coming to Oak Bluffs?
Absolutely. I probably there's a lot more to learn, but I watched a documentary by Dawn Porter. Yes. She shared a documentary with me, and I got to see what some of the origin stories were.
Great.
And how Inkwell became a thing, and how Oak Bluffs became a thing, and it just the experience of racism and oppression and all those things were paralleled here on the island, but also the resilience of our people was also paralleled here.
100%. So what keeps you coming back?
Man, it's a beautiful place to be.
It is.
It's an absolute beautiful place to be. I had an opportunity to stay at a boathouse that a good friend of BPI's, now a good friend of mine, Monita Von Opel and Edward Miller, shared with me and my family. They were gracious to let us come back out and come stay and hang out and have a good time. And it's just been a wonderful relationship and experience to be here. So I keep coming back. Because there's so much, it's a small place, but I feel there's a lot to see here,
it's
right?
True.
And, I love the ocean, I love the water, the people seem very nice, a little expensive sometimes, but yeah, just traveling around the island and seeing all the things that the island has to offer, it's just been an amazing time. And I know there's a saying, and I haven't got the saying right, but it's something about coming here, like you come here twice, you're here for life, or something like that, right? There's something, so I'm on my fourth one. I'm waiting to buy property now.
You better get back to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you see this being a place where you would like to continue to come?
I absolutely can. Outside of my ability to afford it, it's all things being equal, I would love to be able to come here and live on an island, period. I've been going to more places that have oceanfront views over the last couple of years, and it's just, I can always envision myself being there.
Good.
And just having that life, having that beach, and just something, there's just a vibe and energy, and just something really special about being by the water. and having not having to wear boots or sneakers or worried about the winter and just being a part of nature and life, that's just really special.
And like you said, it's a small island. It's only 12 miles by 21 miles.
Wow.
I've been coming here since 1976. Been living here full time for the last 22 years, and I still find places on this little island where I've never been before. Little beaches I never knew existed, little trails I didn't know about. So there's a lot to discover, and hopefully you'll keep coming back. You got friends here now, so you always will find a place to stay.
I mean, when I learned that when I got here the very first time and we did the film screening, College Behind Bars, there was so many folks out of Oak Bluffs. Families out of Oak Bluffs that I had met, and I had got contacts, and we were emailing for a little while, but just like anything, so time goes by and those connections don't stay, but our connection stayed.
Yes.
Dawn is out of the country right now. I would have loved that I had reconnected with her, but I wanted to make sure that I find those connections again here on island, and so that I can keep coming back, because there's a really important history here that's, for me, at least in New York, has gone untold there. I'm the only one that's talking about Martha's Vineyard in a way, or experiencing the way that I have, right? It's really about, Obama lives there, or the Kennedys, or whoever lives
Jaws
there.
was made there.
Jaws was made there. It's not about really just coming out and just seeing the people here. The realness of it, for me, is what keeps bringing me back, especially those families.
Yeah. Well, you're a real guy, man, so I'm not surprised that you would connect with this place in the way that you're describing. I know I did.
Yeah.
And at this point, I can't imagine really living anywhere else.
Yeah.
So you mentioned College Behind Bars. I think it was the first time we met was for the screening, Lynn Novak's documentary, Ken Burns' production. We screened the movie in West Tisbury, and you were part of a panel.
Yeah.
We did an episode of the podcast with you and Daiwan and Max Kenner, the person who created the program. And so I just would like you to kind of catch me up on what's been happening with BPI since the last time we talked about it.
Oh, man. So if you haven't seen the film, anyone listening in, please check it out. College Behind Bars is an amazing film.
It's an amazing film.
Piece. Creativity, genius, and brilliance that are locked behind the walls in our prisons in the country. So what's new with BPI? Well, we had our 25th anniversary this past year.
Congrats.
Thank you. It was an amazing time. We celebrated in Brooklyn at St. Anne's Warehouse, had funders, politicians, many of the alumni community come out and just celebrate the moment. They did a really great job of representing the history of BPI in that moment. I actually had a speaking opportunity there. Invited a lot of friends and family to come through. It was just an amazing time. So our 25th anniversary happened. We have a master's degree program now in Eastern New York Correctional Facility.
And so for folks that may not have heard the episode where you guys talked about it, just tell us quickly, what is BPI?
BPI is the Department of Bar College. We enroll individuals that are currently incarcerated in New York State prisons into the college program. It's as similar of a program as what happens on the main campus in Annandale on Hudson. We have, once again, associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees opportunities. We're in 7 state prisons. We have 3 programs outside of prison that aren't for people that are incarcerated necessarily, but for the communities that they come from. So they're called micro colleges, and we're in Brooklyn, Harlem, and Holyoke, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So 10 campuses altogether. Main campus makes it 11.
Okay. And so you're an alumni.
Yes, I am.
You've continued to work for the program. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, particularly with BPI? Because I know you're doing a lot of other stuff, and we're definitely going to get to that. But I want to kind of round out what's going on with BPI.
All right, so my official title is Project Lead Upstate Reentry in the Capital Region of New York. And my role is to support our alum that return to the upstate region of New York. So you have New York City, Long Island, and you got everywhere else in New York. And I'm the everywhere else guy. I'm taking care of the Capital Region, Western New York, Finger Lakes, North Country, Southern Tier, all the different regions. And I identify resources in those areas where alum are returning home, and I connect them to them. I support alumni, whether it's career development, job opportunities, housing, or just simply getting involved with the community in volunteer capacity in some way, right? Working for or interning with or volunteering with grassroots organizations that work in and around the community. And I'll tell everyone that's listening, What you may not know is that many individuals that are incarcerated for any significant period of time, they want to come out doing something for that community that they left. Right? There's a need to address the issues that they seen growing up, something that may have impacted them, or what they see currently happening in their community. So it's very easy for me to get folks involved in those campaigns.
Okay.
Right? Whether it's addressing homelessness, or it's addressing food insecurity, or just cleaning up the neighborhood, or violence intervention, especially violence intervention, or working with young people. So a lot of our alums, get their degrees or they continue their education when they come home, and then they want to find lanes into addressing the issues in their community. It's very much, I want to say, passion project that they have, and maybe that's overused. I think I've heard that like 5 times in the last couple of days, but it's something that's, I think, is special, but not unique, like to myself or some of the other alums that have. Many folks want to come out and do that, and I think that education is a part of that.
Okay. Sounds like a very big job.
Yeah, it is. It's an important job. I mean, it's easier when you're committed and really care about, what's going on. And I happen to be sort of well connected in my area. I know a lot of grassroots organizations and the politicians and others in the community. That makes the job kind of easier. I'm not starting from scratch. I went through that same kind of gauntlet when I came out. I was working basically just working a job to pay the bills. Volunteering everywhere. That volunteering got me interviewed for a job. That job got me more into the community. I really got my start after my conviction was overturned. I came home in 2019 with my degree and the passion to do the work, right? And I just hit the ground running, and I continue to do that to this day. Now, I'm a little bit, I won't say I'm worse for wear, but I'm a little bit more, battered and bruised going through the gauntlet of just like life. I mean, it's a lot to deal with, the circumstances in our community.
Sure.
George Floyd was murdered. Ahmaud Arbery was murdered. Breonna Taylor was murdered. Nina Pop was murdered. Philando Castile was murdered. And that's where a lot of my activism started in our communities. And I've just been there ever since, just knocking it down. But it's not easy. It's not easy. But to me, it's necessary.
So that was one of my questions, is where does that passion come from? So you were personally affected with the murders of these unarmed, mostly almost everybody you just mentioned was unarmed Black person killed by police.
Yeah. I mean, it's something, I think that the reason why George Floyd or any other folks that I mentioned resonated so much, especially in the Black community, is that we see this, far too often. If it doesn't end in death, it certainly ends in some form of brutality. Like
Sure.
all of our families have the uncle or the auntie or the cousin or whoever who was abused by law enforcement in some sense, or in the corrections department. Like something has happened. So I think George Floyd's particularly was a combination of that sentiment that I just spoke to you about. Also, the fact that we were all kind of glued to our TV sets or glued to our box because we were on a shutdown and because of COVID. And I think that hypersense of reality kind of impacted everyone. And that's where you had this outburst, this outswell, this uprising that happened in the community that made it work.
I agree. It impacted lots and lots of folks, particularly lots of folks that really were not connected to these issues in any way prior. But not everybody was moved to really do something with their life about it. I'm a therapist, so I'm always curious about motivations and kind of underlying causes. Do you have a sense about what it is about you particularly that said, man, I got to get involved in this. I got to do something.
Man, that's going back a little bit. That would have to start more, thinking back on how I became more conscious or aware and radicalized in the sense of like wanting to do something about anything. It's like my sense of justice was peaked after I read the law for years. I'm trying to get home from being incarcerated, and I had read the law for nearly a decade trying to figure it out. And in that reading, along with reading folks like, George Jackson, Blood on My Eye. If you haven't read that, look that up. George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, his brother, Sada Shakur, Angela Davis, James Baldwin. Like reading all of these brilliant Black leaders in the civil, that were, had their time in the civil rights era, definitely had an impact. But then reading the law and coming face to face with the reality that this kind of good guy, bad guy setup that we kind of come to the world with the lens of looking out at the world and saying that someone's good or someone is bad is just disrupted when you see the so-called good guys in these cases that I'm reading being bad guys, violating the law, or violating someone's rights, or And not in a once in a while thing,
Right.
very consistently. You'll see cases where very similar cases. The only difference between the cases is someone is black and someone is white, and they're treated very differently. Appeal is denied for the black person, while the appeal is not denied by for someone white, or that a sentence is this harsh for someone here. Whereas you start to see those things in real time. I think over time it disrupts the reality that the like I said, the black and white reality of the black hat and white hat kind of cowboy scenario. It disrupts it, and you have to begin to recreate a world after that, through what you're reading, your own experiences, and you start to see things differently. Your eyes open up.
So is it fair to say that you woke up in some ways to, the deep nature of systemic racism, particularly in the justice system?
Absolutely. And I mean that. So I'm speaking specifically about the books I read and and many of the legal cases I read, but even being incarcerated or going through that whole process, and seeing what the heroes or the so-called good guys are doing, worse than what the so-called bad guys are doing. I mean, it just puts you face to face with a different kind of reality. Right. And though you have a sense of that in some ways, I think that until you actually, so you have the experience, then you have the education and the reading that allows you the verbiage to articulate, you know what I mean? What's happening there. And then you start putting these things in conversation with each other, and you come up with the passion that I have to actually address it. Because I don't want to see another young person go through what I went through. I don't want to see a young person. I've seen, you see, what, me and you at our age would call children with 30-year sentences, 25-year sentences, 20-year sentences. And more often than not, they look like us. There isn't just one way to address this, because there's so many different angles that have to be addressed in order, I think, to change anything. It can be complicated. I just try to do my part in the best way I can to address the issues that I see in front of me.
And we're going to get to what your part is, because you're doing a lot. We're going to talk about some solutions, but if we drill down a little bit more on the problem, you and I were talking yesterday a little bit, and I thought about after you left that one of the facts that I became aware of is that this country, the United States of America, incarcerates more people than any other country in the world. That's both by number and per capita, right? Why do you think that is? I know that's a big question, and we can go as far as you want, but you and I started talking about a little of the history behind that. The origins of some of this are the problem of what do we do with all these freed slaves? So once enslaved people became quote unquote free in this country, they became a problem for the rest of America in America's eyes, right?
I mean, there's a Ta-Nehisi Coates guy has a book called "We Were 8 Years in Power," right? And
about Reconstruction.
Yes, it is a little bit about that, but I was just thinking of another title of a book that would be more about Reconstruction, is that we were 10 years free in a sense, right? Freer than we had ever been in this country. And
we were holding political office.
Yeah, it's more than we hold today.
Yes.
That's saying something. You know what I mean? We had more seats in the South. African Americans had more political seats in the South in that time period than they do today.
More power,
right? And for people that don't know exactly what we're talking about the end of the Civil War. We're talking about the Reconstruction period that happened right after that. And then we're talking about the Great Compromise between the North and the South that basically gave back everything to the Southern
racists,
white supremacists.
Whatever. You pick whatever you want.
So we're talking about that time period. And I think that what that did, either by intention or mistake, creating an incentive. So one, it's always about controlling the body and controlling people. But two, it also became profitable. So you have these two things where you need control and you want control of a population, but then there's now a profit incentive to continue to do it. And what we've seen, and I talk about this as we get to the civil rights era in the 50s and 60s, you have this era of momentous change in legislation around voting rights and civil rights and et cetera for people of color, for marginalized groups, the whole nine yards. Affirmative action came out of the era, Roe v. Wade, like all these things were coming out of this era. And at the very same time, you had the language of what would eventually propel mass incarceration, the law and order candidate.
Yeah.
Right? That came out of that era. And it starts with Nixon. A little bit before Nixon, there's some history about the language of law and order, but Nixon and then eventually Reagan.
And then Reagan.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then Bill Clinton.
That's right.
And George Bush. Like every president down the line
Furthered that cause.
Yeah. So you have this massively profitable industry. I think Angela Davis talks about this in California. Like, if you build it, they will come. If you build it, you have to fill it, or something like that. Mm-hmm. Where if you build out all these prisons that have to hold thousands of people, you have to fill those beds.
Right.
So what do? You go out and you extract from our communities, and that has been to the detriment of our communities for generations.
And there is profit in each one of those beds filled.
I mean, for everything you can think of, like the existence of a town, mm-hmm. right? What needs to be there, right? For people to exist, you need clothing, you need food, you need electricians, you need mechanics, you need engineers, you need architects, you need people to staff it, you need all of these things.
The whole structure.
And we have prisons, and this is not just unique to New York State, obviously, that the entire town would disappear if the prison left.
Right.
So now, not only do we have this investment that is extremely profitable to many corridors of New York State, you also have people's livelihoods.
Which is generational too at times.
Family business.
Yes.
It becomes a family business.
Right.
And that makes it so very difficult to remove those things, mm-hmm. to think about abolition, mm-hmm. to think about a world where prisons are not a thing. Because now it's baked into all the propaganda. There's a hegemony around like what it means for someone to be incarcerated and who's the type of person to be incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And it fills out all of our systems. That's mm-hmm. why they call this systemic. Mm-hmm. All these different institutions work together, produce the same thing. And the answer is big. And we outsource this too. Mm-hmm. So we've outsourced our models across the globe. Right? Like I've traveled to Argentina and Brazil and other places and been in the UK, like mm-hmm. visiting these prisons and having these same conversations. And like a lot of what we do here is mimicked in other places. And strangely enough, or not strangely enough, or maybe obvious, the populations that are impacted are populations that look like us. Mm-hmm. Or the populations in those communities that are marginalized mm-hmm. communities.
Then there's the privatization of prisons.
Yeah.
When there's contracts often that mm-hmm. they'll strike that demand that they keep the prisons full.
Quota.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
mm-hmm.
that exists too.
It does exist, but I remember DuVernay's documentary 13th, mm-hmm. right? And she talks about that. And some of the critique about when she talks about the privatization of prisons is that it misses the fact that public prisons, whether you're talking about the county corrections or state corrections, they have the lion's share of the bodies. Mm-hmm. They are the ones that are propelling the mass incarceration still. So now that our sister Michelle Alexander, in her book, The New Jim Crow, and this is some years ago now, mm-hmm. like coined this phrase around mass incarceration, I really articulated what that looks like very well. You got Ava DuVernay with 13th. You have many of our state prisons, public or private, their legislators in those communities like moving away from just wanting to lock people up. But what they're doing, regardless if we're careful or not at this point, is now creating mass supervision. Mm-hmm. Right? So we're going from mass incarceration to some mass supervision. So you have an alternative to incarceration mm-hmm. that'll lend you up with an ankle bracelet.
Which will turn neighborhoods into outdoor prisons.
Outdoor prisons,
right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I don't know if people are really paying attention to that. They're not paying attention to the implementation in Albany, for instance. More recently, they have these camera systems that they set up all over the city. Some of them are, and this is for traffic purposes. Mm-hmm. They say it's a public safety service, mm-hmm. except the fact that the data doesn't support this multi-million-dollar investment that they did, but except for, it's going to make this business that sold it to the city wealthy, right. And it's going to actually bring in money because they got to get their money. They got to recoup their money, and they use it, for their own coffers. And we're trying to get them to use that money for something else, if not just tear those things down altogether. Mm-hmm. But you're seeing these systems go up more and more and more mm-hmm. Across the country, and I can look at small cities like Albany, certainly cities in major cities like New York City, and we will see the same things happening. We are in a place of mass surveillance, and it's only getting worse. Yeah. So it's mass incarceration today, mass supervision tomorrow.
So to bring this back to BPI,
yeah, We went all the way.
That's okay. That's okay. We went where we went. The thing that's a trip is that there are programs and initiatives like BPI, which cut recidivism rates incredibly, right?
Yeah.
So you're really now offering something that gives people another way of being when they're released, where that you cut the chances that they're going to come back. But programs like that are not funded. They're not supported.
They are and they aren't. So BPI is 80% privately funded. We just now more recently started getting a little bit more public funding. Some of the other institutions have a bit more public funding. The funding issue is certainly a concern because we need more money to make sure that that this is still accessible to people. If you go back to the '94 crime bill where they eliminated programs like Pell, right, federally, which gave access to people that are incarcerated to funding necessary to enroll in some sort of college program, and the data existed then about whether or not this program was good for that very, very low bar of recidivism. Like we're using the metric of like whether or not I went back to prison as as the metric that's going to determine whether someone's successful.
What's the right metric?
I think the right metric is more about living a full life. Going back to prison shouldn't be the metric. I mean, it's a metric we can use. What if I'm stuck in a cycle of poverty?
Yeah.
What if I'm living on the street but I'm not going back to prison?
Yep.
What if all these other things are happening in my life but I'm not in prison? So shouldn't we be looking at that?
Is that a success?
Yeah, is it really a success?
Right.
Has someone actually escaped? Like 85-90% of people that get incarcerated are coming back home one day. And those folks will have an impact on communities they return to.
Positive or negative.
Positive or negative. So what is it we can be doing to ensure that this is more likely positive than a negative experience? That's what we want.
So what are you doing, Shawn? What are you doing to help fight that fight?
Man, I'm doing all I can. So working with BPI, working with the alum that come home is what we're just talking about. Certainly getting folks in, jobs and housing and all those things to make sure they have a stable foundation to which they can do whatever they want to do with their education and around the world is one part. I co-founded an organization called All of Us Community Action Group. That's about advocacy and activism, and that's about working to politically educate, and get the votes out, and getting communities to begin to work more together, talk with their neighbors about the issues they have, and be advocates and voices for themselves down at the local city hall, etc. And just knowing their rights and maybe to make demands about investments in their communities.
Okay. How's that program doing?
That program's doing all right.
Great.
We need money too. that program needs money too, but it's doing okay. That's work that's also very difficult when you realize how unprepared so many people are, and how unwilling sometimes people are to actually advocate for themselves, and how neglected or ignored many of these communities are. And that's why they have this, what I'm going to vote for, it doesn't count. What am I going to do this for? It doesn't matter. Why would I want to talk to them because of blah, blah, blah. And this has been ingrained for a very, very long time. So being able to break that, it takes consistency. It takes a little bit of boldness, leadership. You got to be able to walk and talk with people and not have any, this is interesting because working with some of the organizations, the grassroots folks that come around and some of the folks that make a lot of money doing this stuff, they don't walk and talk in those communities. So on the one hand, they're advocating for the rights of or investment in or some blah, blah, blah that's about the communities where I lived and grew up in, but they don't walk and talk with those same people. You know what I mean? They fear going in those same neighborhoods. Because many of them are not from those neighborhoods. Now, anyone listening, I'm not speaking to all of y'all, but y'all know who y'all is that I'm speaking to, right? So it's just like you gotta think about it. So it just becomes, it is difficult. When you're winning, it's great. When you realize that you put in, however many hours and weeks and months trying to get folks out to vote, and then turnout is still very low, and people still haven't followed up and followed through. It can be a little bit disheartening. But I think I'm one of those optimistics that I understand there's been a consistent neglect over a significant amount of time. So there has to be the opposite reaction. It has to be consistency and positivity and really just bringing people together and just letting them know that this is a thing. And at some point, I think that balance shifts a little bit, right? And it's important to also have partners in different institutions that work with you. Like in the cities I go with, I have great relationships with some of the legislators there. I'm also on their ass sometime when they, can I curse on here a little bit?
A little bit.
All right. I'm also on their butt when they ain't doing what they supposed to do. We had some significant elections just happened recently, both in New York City and Albany, right? We have new mayors. The Democratic Socialist kind of perspective is winning the day in those cities right now. So
Woke up and the world was shocked, man.
Man. Well, we need change.
Yeah, we do.
And I don't know if we're going to vote ourselves out of tyranny, but at least people are waking up and are more aware than what they ever been. And going back to sleep now is at your detriment. So all of us advocacy stuff is one thing, but the legacy project, one of the things I've really more recently introduced to, and I'm a part of, is something called the Legacy Project International. Now, the Legacy Project International is a program that I got involved with, say, a couple of years ago. Met a young lady named Halima Gelman at a friend's birthday party. I had just got back from the UK. I was in Brazil. I was in Spain. I've just been traveling the world a little bit. And we just got to talking about the work that she does. And she brought up, the Legacy Project. And she's like, it has to connect international travel with healing young people, which was the main focus, and ended up moving into people that were formerly incarcerated, people that have the experience of like community leaders working in communities such as myself. And it resonated with me because the travel that I had just came from had kind of changed me.
You felt
a lot.
Yeah.
And you go back to James Baldwin and his reasons for, and his experience going to France in 1948, it was like, what he said is that he had escaped the American psychosis. He never realized like how much he needed that escape. So at the same time where we have this international travel, which brings with it its own awakening of sorts and some distance from the status quo and the life that you live, you have the introduction to the indigenous peoples and healing practices of those communities, and you have an intentional community that is allowing you the opportunity to see or work with a healing modality that best suits you. Right? And you have all these different practices from yoga to Reiki to all these different things that we're able to do. And then like I think the tertiary, like the tertiary part of it is that there's the impact of you just connected these people from across the country. So we just had this, I don't know if I skipped around a little bit, but we just had this retreat in December, our inaugural retreat. And you have these brilliant people from across the country that came together in one space in Mexico, brought together by the Legacy Project team, which I'm a board member. And we're going there because, we need to address our own traumas and we need to find ways to heal. We need to find ways to process and deal with some of the things we're dealing with to make us more effective human beings, but also more effective leaders. And then it had the effect of like connecting people that do great work across the country. And I've already worked with a couple of people that were at the retreat, and they're working with each other in different capacities. And I think it's just it's beautiful. It's just one of those radical, moves forward in a way that it was unexpected surprise. I'll be the first one to tell you, and I said it. I've been saying it since the beginning. I don't need therapy. I don't need counseling. I don't need healing. I do this in a particular way. I think other people might need that. Lo and behold, I obviously needed all those things myself. And I'm still a work in progress. The one trip didn't change everything, but I thought it was just, we need our leaders to be healthy and whole. And the work that we do, and this is, and you heard me alluding to it in my conversation, is very burdensome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially like the reasons why I got into this work and the passion that I have for it didn't resolve the issues that I experienced while I was incarcerated, or I experienced while I was, before I was incarcerated, living in, rough streets of the capital region or rough streets of Brooklyn, New York, etc. So it didn't heal any of that. None of that stuff was really addressed. We still have this very patriarchal kind of, put it on me, still had this kind of strongman personality where I can deal with anything and I can just brush it off my shoulder, as most men are kind of trained to be like, right? I found myself in a situation for the first time where I had to acknowledge that just burying things, like it's so funny because you just bury it and deep somewhere, it doesn't mean it goes away. It finds a way to pop itself up. So yeah, we want our leaders to be effective. We want them to be healed as much as they can. And we want them to be able to address the issues that they have so they can be better at what they do in our communities, because we need them there. Because not everyone's willing to stand up and speak out, or can in the same way stand up and speak out. So the ones that are, we need them out there doing their thing.
So is the trauma that you're dealing with personal things that have happened to people, or are we talking about generational trauma, community trauma?
All of the above.
All of the above?
Yes, all of the above. Circle the letter D on the test. All of the above. It literally is all of the above. It can be easy to ignore in the communities I come from because it's not talked about.
Yeah.
You
and
know
it's
what I
so
mean?
prevalent.
Yeah, and it's so and you see
if
it.
everybody around you is walking around with trauma kind of loses its importance.
Exactly.
It's just part of the water that we swim in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you ask yourself why we see the things we see and why the behaviors are the way they are, and we oftentimes as a society chalk it up to just maladaptive behavior or you know what I mean, or some failing of
some personal failing.
Yeah,
Yes.
instead of thinking about, wait a minute, like looking at the history, and this is why I love history so much. I love the origins of things, right? It just helps me better understand my world. In the same way that works for me personally, right? And the same way it works for me looking at the history of myself and figuring out what some of the beginnings were and how I came to be who I am, and you know what I mean, why I like the things I like. And going back to James Baldwin, he talks about this with education. It's important that a student understands the purpose of their education and the history of what brought them to this place and what they're doing with that education. This is as important to understand the history of yourself and the communities you work with. Understand the history of that community. You need to know how things started.
Yes.
And we don't do a lot of that. Or we do, but we'll tell a very fairy tale mythological story about it. Like George Washington chopping down cherry trees with wooden teeth. Or Paul Revere. And I don't know if people really understand the power of storytelling. The fictional narratives that we've internalized. I still know the pledge. Like I still know it by heart because I was a child being forced to do the pledge every single day when I was in school.
It's one of the things that is so dangerous and scary to me about this desire by this new administration to really erase our history and to prevent us from teaching and passing on. Because some of the books we just talked about, people are talking about banning these books.
Yeah.
And some of the people that are talking about banning these books have never even read these books. So it comes from a place of not what's in the book, but the idea that they know if you can disconnect a people from its history, you can keep them disconnected from themselves and from each other, really.
Which has been the story of the African here on this continent since they were brought here hundreds of years ago. If we can divorce them from their language, their culture, their identity, their history, then we can control them. And that's what happened. And now that we have so much time has passed, now there's more of a history there that's being developed despite. And I think this is where, so all my brown, black, adjacently connected to African Americans, to Africans, period, in this country. And this is something I didn't hear this from James. I can't remember exactly where I heard this from, but he was talking about. Oh, I did hear from James. Damn, James is just all.
He meant a lot to you.
Yeah. James means a lot to me, man.
Yeah.
So he talks about the glorious history of us, and he says you don't look back at your history in shame. Don't look back at that history as a shameful moment in time. You look at the perseverance and the resilience of a people that were meant to not be here, that were trying to be destroyed every single day of their existence in this country, from the transatlantic slave trades to the existence of that people here in this country for hundreds of years and other parts of the Western Hemisphere. And the fact that we survived and in some instances thrived despite those conditions is a glorious history in and of itself.
So despite all the abuse, the trauma, the lynchings, the laws meant to keep us, the psychological warfare that went, we still rise, right?
We still rise.
Yes,
we still rise. And I think that there isn't many people that survived intact, something like that. And there isn't a moment in history that, when you look at all the different versions of, people love to, everyone was a slave somewhere. Yeah, it wasn't this kind of slavery.
It wasn't a generational.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, exactly. They intentionally changed what was the standard practice of enslavement, where to pass it to the mother, right? So all the children of the mother, despite being raped by the, slave master, could be enslaved and could be sold and could be profited from.
Profitable,
right? Yeah. This is where we start to see the birth of capitalism, coming out of the moment of slavery and the idea that you could own people in that way.
It's getting deep in here.
Man, a little bit. I think I know a little bit about a little bit sometimes, man. And James has been very instructive in my life, and he's been dead, for almost close on 40 years now. I think 38 years. Yeah, he's just been like his books, his readings, his lectures. I still listen to him today.
Do you?
Just brilliant. Stuart Hall as well. Mm-hmm. Stuart Hall is another brilliant.
I was going to ask you, who are the voices today? Who are our James Baldwins, our Richard Wrights? Who are they today?
Man, that's a
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Coates is someone that I definitely pay close attention to, man. Mm-hmm. I've definitely watched. I've read a couple of his books. I think he's brilliant. He's a brilliant writer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's James Baldwin. I don't know if he wants to be James Baldwin, but he's definitely brilliant in his own right. Marion Kaba is amazing. Dr. Ruth Gilmore is also amazing abolitionist. And there's many others that I read, but I do find myself looking at what I consider the pillars of this work of connecting with our community and articulating the plight in the systems and institutions in our country. And there are some names, but I got to be honest, a lot of what they're saying is very similar to what I've heard out of that era. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's another brother who y'all don't maybe know about. His name is Octavius Cato, and he's considered the Martin Luther King of his time, the earlier 20th century. Mm-hmm. So discovering these gems in our history and then seeing how much of what's being said then relates now in so many different ways is not to say that nothing has changed. Of course, things have changed, but a lot of things haven't. A lot of the way you articulate these things haven't.
I was thinking of Frederick Douglass when you started. I started thinking about names because we were going forward. I started to go back. Well, who came before?
Yeah.
Right, because he was writing about the same kind of things.
W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells. Yeah. So many others that were doing the work. And I would look up Octavius Cato.
I will.
If I was you. Octavius Cato was a very interesting read. I can't think of the name of the book off the top of my head, but I can give it to you later on.
Okay. So, Shawn, I also know one of the projects you were involved in is Freedom is a Must. Tell us a little bit about that one.
First, let me tell you what freedom is a must means.
Please.
Freedom is a must is a rallying cry. In a sense, I don't know if rallying cry is the right way to put it. It's a phrase that's been used while I was incarcerated by a lot of the guys. And it would happen in the instance of some of the worst, and to say someone didn't get a visit that day. They were expecting to see their loved ones and something happened where the visit was canceled, right? Say there was some other difficulty happening in prison at the time, was making their time much harder, and they were facing some issues behind it. One of the guys in our crew or in together would say freedom is a must. And the point of freedom is a must was to say that keep your eyes on the prize, right? Keep your eyes on the prize. This is happening, but this too shall pass. Keep your eyes on the prize. Freedom is a must. Your freedom is more important than any of that.
Okay.
So don't lose your freedom. Don't lose the fight for your freedom.
Okay. Don't give up.
Don't give up. Don't get set back. You know what I mean? It's very easy, to be in prison, to find yourself either dead or there forever. It's not hard. So and we're all human beings. We all have emotion that things happen. Family members die. Like things go crazy in your life, and you can be derailed. And you can imagine there's not much of a support system in a prison for someone going through emotional turmoil, right? So for the guys, we come up with our own little saying, and then that was freedom is a must. I didn't start the saying. It is one that I adopted over time, and it's just freedom is a must. So you would see someone, you would say that to them. So that's where the origin of that phrase comes from for me. And I had this opportunity with BPI to develop a housing project, which I believe that housing was one of the major factors in whether someone's successful or not, is having a safe, stable place to rest their head in order to do everything else in
housing
life.
First.
Yeah, if you're housing insecure, if it's you know what I mean, then how can you be successful in any other thing if that's a problem, or you don't have a safe space to sleep at night, right? How difficult is that? So I wanted to create those spaces. So I developed a project around that and I titled it, I couldn't think of a better name for it, was Freedom is a Must. And it's basically housing placement rental assistance for alumni of the program. It's 12 months long. We subsidize the rent. And it starts with my relationship with landlords or property owners in the area. And I don't allow our folks to go to places that are heavily policed. and have all the other elements and things that may become really problematic for them. They usually go to places that are walkable. They have parks, and it's just different kinds of communities.
Okay.
Right? Places maybe they never lived before, some of them. And it's been a success. We've had a couple of alums go through that program. One alum's been in this house for 3 years. Another one finished a year and then moved and went somewhere else. One of the cores of success is just safe and stable, clean housing.
Yeah.
That's why the program was started, and it's been successful so far. So yeah, freedom is a must.
So that's all you do? You don't do anything else besides all those programs you talk about? Do you sleep at all? I mean, what do you?
I try, man. I try. I really. And this is where healing the leaders comes into play. Things like that, folks, is like Legacy Project, where they could take someone like me, because I'm not unique in the sense there's many of folks like me who are very passionate and care and do this work.
But aren't the greatest at self-care, a lot
aren't the greatest at self-care. Yeah. So like having an entity be able to come in and say, hey, we're going to care about you. We're going to give you the tools. That only makes me a more effective leader in my community, and also allows me to share those same tools with others and have those conversations. Because the same way my experience with incarceration, my experience with police brutality, or my experience with the justice system allows me to be a credible messenger when it comes to actually talking about those things. My experience with healing, my experience with the Legacy Project International, my experience with other folks going through those same trials and tribulation also allows me a credible messenger for other folks. Like, hey, this works. A lot of folks are going to come to it with a bias, just like I had. When you go through it and you reap the benefits, you can better articulate that to folks.
So, Shawn, for people that would like to support these programs, can you give us a way to do that? Can you give us some information about how we can get in touch and donate or support you in different ways?
Man, they can visit our website. So one of the websites is legacyprojectinternational.org. Our donation page is there. You can also visit the Bar Prison Initiative on their website and donate there. And All of Us Community Action Group, visit their website and donate there.
Great. I hope you people do. These are all worthy causes. And Shawn, we really appreciate you coming and sharing your experience with us. And we hope to see you again on the island real soon. Man,
thanks for having me back. This has been a wonderful conversation. I love talking about these things.
Likewise.
And invite me back anytime. And
we
hopefully
will.
I get to invite you to come do a show with us back in New York one day.
You just invite me. I'll be there.
All right?
Okay.
All right.
Thanks
awesome,
a lot.
brother. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we do hope to hear from you again. Thanks for listening to Shed. In addition to you, the audience, we'd like to thank some of the folks who help us put this podcast together and bring it to you. Amy Schumer and Martha's Vineyard's own Chris Fisher. Dana Edelman for providing that funky music to start us and take us out. We'd like to thank Ray Whitaker for providing all the expertise behind the microphone. And of course, none of this would be possible and wouldn't have happened if Dana Nunes didn't stand up.
You've been listening to Shed, Conversations about Race on Martha's Vineyard, with your host, Eric Adams. A presentation of MVY Radio.